There we go.
Now recording.
Sweet. Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. In 3. Hello, welcome to the Inland Empire Aces. I'm Gabe, and with me is Mitch. Say hi, Mitch.
Hey, sorry, I'm getting a little cross feed here from the.
Say hi, Mitch.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Hey, sorry, I'm getting a little.
Oh, somebody doesn't have headphones.
I'm on headphones. There we go. I just closed out the Twitch.
Okay. And we have a special guest today, Ryan Frost, finalist from the Styx Hyperspace Trial.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Really well. How about you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Well, finally well rested.
Yeah, it took probably a couple days to get that back.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will talk a little bit about that and what you ran and what you faced, and a little bit later. To start off, let's go through some events. Trevor, you want to lead us through those? I think it's nice.
No, I already have my my cut from the hyperspace qualifier at Phoenix.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, we had a hyperspace trial, and it was fantastic. We had a lot of fun. The marshal was Charles. He did a great job running the event. Mitch was judge, bless his heart, for running around and doing that. Mike.
Specifically, other Mitch.
Yeah, that was Mitch. Other Mitch. Mitch Hurst, also known as Michael Hurst. So Mitch the judge did a great job there, and Michael Deegan was his backup judge, and he also co-commentated with me on our not so live stream. We had technical difficulties. We mentioned time and again that we were going to stream it, but it ended up that we had to record it and load it afterwards. Those videos are all up, so you can watch those online. Yeah, so we should probably hop into what you guys ran and what your experiences were. Who wants to start off?
Trevor, why don't you lead it off?
What was that, Mitch?
And Trevor, why don't you lead it off? What place were you in Swiss? In Swiss?
16th, right there. Yeah, just making it in.
Yeah, I saw the game. It was like watching a juice presser take down an orange.
You know what's funny though is as we were commentating, we saw Trevor line up his TIE fighters through this beautiful gap in the asteroids. No, he didn't bank there. He turned one hard and totally predicted where Franklin was going to go with his squad, and I was just taken aback. It was amazing. A little biased, but
Well, pretty good. All things considered. So I had also had the buy-in round one of Swiss. And then I got these.
You ran, right?
Oh, not this
No,
time.
of course not.
Black Sun Assassins.
Yeah.
Assassins.
I mean, when you have ships that are painted that beautifully, you can't not fly them. I mean, it was so cool to see those on the table.
For those who don't know, those are the Star Viper.
Yeah, the Monarch
PS3.
color.
Yeah, PS3s, 4 of them with crack shot. Yeah, had the round one buy. Right before the trial started, Brent gave me these Phoenix Squadron shield tokens to use. For the course of the tournament, I do get matched up with 3 of Phoenix Squadrons. So
Hey,
might have been some fake there. I don't know. In particular, I think I had the strongest MOV in Swiss, or not MOV. Sorry, strength of schedule in Swiss. I was tied with I want to say number 1 in Swiss. We both had a 0.73 strength of schedule. Of my 5 opponents, 4 of them made it into the cut. It was definitely a strong day for competition. In particular, I want to give some shout outs to Andrew Lopez, a fellow from the Escondido meta, out of the Escondido Ewoks, playing out of Gaming on Grand. Play each other all the time, almost every week or every other week. And he's had a significant amount of practice against my list, and it showed. He knew all the right moves and played probably one of the best games I've seen him play in. He got me out in the center of the board with some good bait and ended up not letting me block K turns.
and he was
Except in a few.
double torrent, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I ended up picking off the 2 gold squadrons, and then he regened his Jedi's above half right as time right before time. He ended up picking me off on points there. It was a pretty good played game. And then my other big standout opponent was also flying that same list, Enrique Benitez. Top 8, same list, Mace, Anakin with the Gold Squadron blockers, and I think almost every time I come up to GMI's tournaments, we manage to run into each other. He didn't want to go on stream because he was, he was afraid I was gonna, beat him on stream. And that game was close. The game ended 50-50.
Whoa.
Chasing his Anakin and his 2 gold squadrons almost the entire way around the board in a lap. Meanwhile, having to break off periodically one of my Star Vipers to kind of keep Mace running. And then, I finally got the second kill on the torrent about around that full. Actually, for me, it was a full lap around the board because I deployed bottom center. Right as I completed that first lap, came into the center to go, chase and engage his Jedi. And he managed to pick up half on a couple of my Star Vipers right as time went. Turned it into a 12v4 final salvo. It's a little bit lopsided on that.
That's kind of skewed, just a little.
Yeah, I remember when you were doing the final salvo dice, and Enrique rolled his 4, got 2 hits. Then you rolled your first 6, and got only 2 hits. And you're like, oh, it's a tie. And then you picked up the whole handful again and just threw it down. Like, that's not all the dice.
That's only half.
Yeah.
I only had half out.
Yeah.
But
Who
no,
brings 12 dice?
Hey, I have like 20.
We have who brings it to a tournament? Like,
I mean,
do you bring all of them?
yeah, I got my
All
Star
right.
Wars baggie full of them.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta mind game the opponent, but
Yeah.
I try not to carry anything I don't need immediately. But still, shout out to Enrique. He's seen him grow so much as an X-Wing player, and game definitely proved that he was, top cut material there.
Yeah, well-deserved top 8 for him. I talked to him a little bit during the Swiss matches, and he said, I feel like I'm playing the best games of X-Men I've ever played. Even the games I lost. So he lost 1 or 2 in Swiss. I think it might have only been 1. But he, even that one, he felt like he flew his tail off and really earned that as much MOV as he got. He had some of the highest MOV of anybody in the tournament.
If I didn't go 5-1, I wouldn't be in the cut.
Yeah.
That kind of comes with your play style, though, right? With these ships.
Yeah.
Strategy.
Generics is you don't get a lot of MOV running them. What about you, Ryan? How's your experience?
So pretty good, all things considered. I was running a Republic Swarm with Sinker in the Ark, Luminara in the Jedi Starfighter, with an R4 Astromech and 4 Gold Squadron V19s.
Lots of dice, lots of ships.
Lots of ships. It relies really heavily on focus firing and getting a lot of those double mods from Sinker. It's a tricky list to fly. I seem to have found a way to game that a little bit.
You seem to, yeah. What did you call the squad when we were talking?
Well, it kind of got a couple different iterations during this tournament, but it seemed to have settled on like Swedish beef because somehow during like the later rounds in the tournament on the first day, a persona had come out of nowhere where I guess I started Swedish chef talking about everything. Because I was just losing it, apparently. And, I guess that's how that came apart.
I really like the Republic pork that you said. That was another suggestion.
It's just so many things. I haven't decided on anything yet.
That's great.
But in terms of my matches, I played a lot of Rebel Beef.
I think I call you the Butcher of GMI now.
Yeah. Because... first round was Rebel Beef, which I was kind of expecting. I mean, most people were probably expecting to play against it a couple times, but prior to the tournament, I think I had only played against a Rebel Beef archetype once with my list. So, I mean, I wasn't entirely sure how things were going to run. But after the first game, it was a pretty close. It was probably my closest game of the tournament was against, and I will butcher this name, Slawomir. That game it started off really bad. I think I had lost Sinker in the pretty much first round of shots, and my dice were just pretty awful, and it snowballed pretty quickly. And I lost a couple V19s, and somehow, I don't know, my dice woke up when half of my ships were gone, and I just started taking out one ship after another, getting half points on another, and pulled it through 174 to 161, which for my list is too close for comfort. Second match was yet another Rebel Beef. Pretty much by that time, I kind of figured out how they kind of fly these things, and I adjusted my list and how I was setting up to accommodate for that. So the second game was a little bit more handed. Third game was against a Darth Vader, Merrick Steele, and Tomek's list. where when I remember that match, I'd set up an engagement to where I could get most, if not all, my shots on, I believe it was Merrick, and took him out in first round of engagement before much of any damage was done. And then after that, really just Tomex, and then Vader by himself. It went pretty south pretty quick. My fourth match, which was my one loss of the first day on Saturday, was against Xavier, a buddy of mine from the Shuffle and Cut area. We play a good amount, and we're good buddies and such. And after I started running this list, initially I had gotten about a good 20 games undefeated with it, and then he shows up to Shuffle and Cut one and Boba, and he's like, "I'm just going to try this out," and I'm like, "That seems mean." And he just goes on to just completely trouncing me with it. Gurries with afterburners, and just Gurry being Gurry. It's just so mean. And the way he just disengages so leisurely, making you think he's going to go for you and just have you point your entire list in the wrong direction. And so, yeah, we went up on stream, and I, knowing that he beat my list once before, I tried to do things very differently. And on the actual VOD that's for that match, it's going to look like just a cluster schmuck of just what the heck is this guy doing?
There was one move where I was like, "That's really cool. Why did he do it?"
Yeah, I think there was this one turn with Luminara. I went 5 forward, and then the turn after 5 forward just to get a shot at Gurry, and it was the 5 forward through a rock, and it was just I had to do stupid, crazy things like that just to get shots. And
it's interesting hearing that how you said that he could disengage and bring your whole list pointing in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
And in this game on stream, it seemed like you had the torrents kind of covering multiple arcs. And so
my kind of sort of halfway plan was, I'm just going to get as many shots as possible. And I mean, with his list, it's very difficult because we play a lot, so he kind of knows how he can get into my head and know what I'm thinking. Sometimes it seems so it's really hard to remind yourself of that and go, oh, okay, he knows how I want to do this, so he might go this approach instead of the other, which I think he would do. So I would have to completely just adjust on the fly, and it was a very difficult match. And then after that, that match was followed by another 2 Rebel Beef players, one being Jeff. That match was interesting because Jeff knew right off the bat he was kind of familiar with my list to some degree, and he knew he needed to take Sinker out as soon as possible, and he was lining up his ships in such a way where he was getting multiple range 1s and range 2s on Sinker alone, and through just the way dice go, Sinkers lived through that exchange, and Jeff was just like, that's it. I had to kill Sinker out that right there, or this was over. And yeah, that's kind of roughly how the things went in that exchange. And then my last match of the day was again another Rebel Beef against Sean McCord. And by that was the round when things were just getting loopy, and this whole Swedish chef persona came out, and we were having a whole lot of fun, and it was a hoot.
You played Sean in the cut also, right?
Yeah, I did. I played him again on the second day because he also made the cut.
Were you guys kind of not wanting to show each other your strategy during the Swiss game, or?
Not necessarily. So, I had a good idea how I set up and such, because with this list, I set up every single time. And I don't know if we want to get into that now, or we can wait until we talk about me and Mitch's match.
We can wait a little bit on it.
Yeah, I set up in such a way to where it's the most opportune or most beneficial way this list can go if you know how to run it right.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw that I was setting up the exact same way, so I think that he was thinking, okay, well, maybe I need to disrupt this strategy. So he's set up in a way where he's just sets up in a jousting position right in front on my side of the board, and went for that. That match went in the I think that was also another one that was recorded. So if you watch that one, you can see that there was maybe 4 or 5 rounds of me self bumping to block his K turns and stuff from Leia, and it was just tons of shots on was it Braylon? Is it Braylon? And 10 nub. Yeah, so essentially the way I handle the Rebel Beef is it's all about choosing which targets to go for first. I hear people say go for Cassian first, just take Cassian out. It prevents a lot of the wonkiness of the list. But in all my experience with all the times I played against it,
I kill one of the B-Wings or Wedge.
Yeah, I go almost explicitly for 10 or Braylon first to knock out the B-Wings. If I can get some opportune shots on Wedge, I'll take those.
Yeah, most good players won't hand them to you, though.
Yeah, exactly. And so almost every single one of my games, I went for Braylon and 10 first, and then Wedge, and then Cassian was always the last ship. Because at the end, once Cassian's gone, there's really not much Cassian can do by himself.
See, in my Rebel Beef games, the first game I played was versus Jeff, and I took out Braylon first, and I won that game. So I'm thinking, when I played against Isaiah, let's go after Braylon first. Did it, almost win the game. Then I do my top 16 versus Isaiah, go after Braylon first, and I just get destroyed.
Yeah. If I had to choose between picking Braylon or 10 first, I would try to go for 10 first, because Braylon has the potential for going really, really badly with my particular list, because I have all those extra shots.
Yeah.
I think it's the reroll.
Braylon gets all those rerolls, so it has the potential ending really badly.
Mm-hmm. But with 10's got a little bit better end game because he can continually K-turn too.
Correct. And
but it's the 2K, so
exactly. He only has a 2K, but at best he has 2 mods for defense. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I usually try to go for 10 first. And then my top 8 match was against the Anakin, Mace, and 2 V19s. That was also an interesting match, because I'd also gone against one of the very similar type of a list in the past before too with this list, and he was similarly setting up to just get a bunch of range 1, range 2 shots on sinker, and I had gotten an engagement where he was at best getting just Mace and Anakin shots on sinker, and so sinker lived that first round of engagement, and I got maybe 3 or 4 range 1 and the rest range 2 shots on Mace, and took him out in 1 turn. And then after that, it was I think I decided to not go for Anakin and just take out the rest of the V19s, and then from there it's just solo Anakin.
Definitely dangerous.
Yeah.
And then I saw, yet more Rebel Beef in the top 4.
Yeah. 2 of the people that I beat in the first day ended up in the top 4. Or top 8, I believe. No, top 4.
Yeah, I had 3 out of my 5 opponents in the top 16. I played day 1, and then I think Mitch, you played 4 out of your 5 made top 16.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, and like everyone knows your strategy the next day.
Yeah, that I was actually kind of worried that it was looking like me and Jeff were going to be paired the first match of the second day, and because he was the one I was most concerned about, because he was the one that was most familiar with how my list ran and knew the best way to defeat it. So for whatever reason, I don't understand why we didn't end up getting paired. So
that did cause me to run a change up in my rematch. My round 1 opponent was he was running the Rebel Aces with Luke, Nora, and Han, and I had faced him before the other day, and I hid behind the rocks, drug him through him, and picked him off. And then like I could see it when he was deploying. Like he knew my game. He had found some good holes in the rocks. And he had like Luke coming down one lane, Nora set to come down another lane, and then Han had an open lane down the center to kind of sneak behind there. And I'm like, I'm just gonna get smoked out of my house. So I'm like, I ended up pouncing out of there on Nora to throw a change up and some good dice, and Nora burned down in the first round. Sometimes you ever think, keep a second strat in the back pocket in case you get a rematch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got rematched with Isaiah, and I feel like he probably spent all night coming up with like a strategy versus me, because like our Swiss game was like so close. And at the same time,
it looks like it worked though.
Yeah, it worked. Well, like in the middle of the game, like you can watch the stream. It got started late, and they were having some technical difficulties. But you get right up to the point where all of a sudden, like 3 TIE fighters pop in 3 shots, and then that's like game over. Vader's just like left versus his whole list. It's like, this isn't as going as good as what the Swiss game was. But like he set it up right and played great, and then he felt bad because the Swiss game kind of had some dice variants too. So he felt bad and gave me his top 8 templates, and so
man, what
it all worked out.
There.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
did we mention this kid? There's a kid like
he went 6-0 in Swiss the first day, and he's 11 years old.
Yeah.
By the way, I think he was the guy that tied me for strength of schedule too. So
yeah,
it's not like he lucked his way through some potatoes into 6-0. The kid earned it.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, he was playing some. I'd seen a couple of his matches. He was playing some pretty strong lists, certainly, and coming out on top.
Yeah.
I would probably vote him hero of the tournament. I was completely shocked by what a good showing.
Mm-hmm.
So for the event as a whole, we won't get into the final round yet, but as an event as a whole, what do you think, Gabe?
I thought it was a lot of fun. People looked like they were, like I was commenting on one of the games, I looked up and there were smiles on every table. Like everybody had a good time. I think there were a couple constructive criticism feedback we received, so we'll implement that. I think the biggest complaint was lunch, because everything was so far away. They decided to give it a little more time for lunch, but people got back pretty fast, and we realized, oops, we shouldn't have made lunch that long.
And fortunately, a little too late.
Yeah. So we got
4.
Yeah, next year. Well, and the other idea is to just bring something in and not let people go out far. I don't know.
Yeah, the catered pizza was a hit. Like, I mean, that was fairly priced, and it was a good amount of food for the money. So I didn't feel, you didn't feel like cheated or going, hey, this is the only game in town.
Although myself and several other people, I agree with them. That pizza doesn't sit well at me. The greasiness just makes me really, I don't know. I don't focus well on the next few rounds. So
I gotta have that cast iron stomach to.
I don't. And so as a commentator, I was like, okay, it's fine. The pizza's good, but I'll have to think about carefully what I want to bring to a tournament for lunch when it's a big tournament like that. What else do I want to say? I think no, I guess that's it.
Streaming all went good for you?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun talking with Mike, and the stream improvement. I wish we had a dice cam.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. But like we looked at the first round and it was like, oh, we cannot see a single face of these dice. The way that the light hit it, every die face was white entirely.
Yeah, enjoy those new regionals dice as we just released about 16 sets into the SoCal area.
Yeah, I can't even tell the crits and the hits apart on them. Like it takes like me picking it up and looking at it to actually like see what it really was.
Note to self: roll the new regionals dice against Trevor.
Oh yeah, it's crit.
Every time when I'm playing Merrick Steele, you wouldn't believe it.
I thought the event was pretty good. Like my first round, just as a bye, I felt like refreshed going in the next 3 rounds, especially because lunch was right after the first round that I played. So I didn't really feel fatigue, and we left there at around 11. And so even though we started late and had a late lunch, like we still left at a reasonable time.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was good. What do you guys think?
I won the whole damn thing, so it was great.
Spoilers.
I know. Mitch is like,
I mean, as far as I can say, at least I didn't like super cut up one of my fingers right before the tournament. And
oh man, I feel bad for that guy.
but you gotta give that guy props. He went to the emergency room and like before the tournament, he was given the option to get stitches and said, "Nah, I gotta be at this tournament. Just wrap it up, coach."
He used it as like a trophy. He's like, "Look at this."
They threw a butterfly
That's some
clip.
dedication to the game.
Butterfly clip, wrap it up, and go.
Yeah, and
he didn't make cut, but he made a cut.
yeah.
Womp womp.
All right, so the final round. So Mitch, you got your 4-star Vipers, and then you're facing.
Oh wait, really quick! I just remembered one thing.
Oh yeah.
Somebody said this about the event that I thought about it in hindsight. I wasn't paying attention because I wasn't playing, but we were in a big gym at a high school, and so they had the scoreboard clocks on the walls, the big ones, and that's what we used for the round timers, and that was really appreciated by a lot of the players.
Yeah, that was really awesome.
That was so good to be able to look up and see the time whenever you wanted from either side of the board.
Yeah.
Especially when you're running a list that depend on that last round, right, Mitch?
That's a good segue.
Oh yeah. So the final. Oh man. Generally, when I'm flying my list, kind of as I've developed it as a strategy, one of the neat things of it is it basically can deploy on round 2 or 3 as I need. I just, because you don't give the opponent any information. You set it up center board, turns towards the corner of your choice. Depending on whether or not you boost, you can be in that corner on turn 2 or turn 3. So despite being filled with initiative 3s, it basically gets to deploy last. And then, given the way the Star Vipers move with those bendy rolls, they can hang out on the board edge behind the rocks. And then combined with their ability to kind of crab walk to the side while they're fighting, you can catch a lot of opponents out as they're trying to maneuver through those rocks to engage you and force them to drive over those rocks repeatedly. And then on top of that, once they get through the rocks, if you kept the board edge at your back, they now can't K-turn over you to continue the engagement.
Mitch, speaking of the rocks, now when you're doing your turn 0 and you're placing rocks, what's your process with that? What do you?
Basically, I want to build the Star Viper Happy Fun House. So that's going to be a rock in one of the corners, a tube with just a little bit in, so you can't tuck something else in there, and then another rock obstacle, whatever your opponent lets you get.
Mm-hmm.
A range 1 away from it, and then if your opponent lets you have a third rock, complete the triangle, and that's your little triangle of death that grindstone most of the opposing lists against.
What's really funny you say that, because with my list and how I place my rocks, I want the exact same thing, but for the exact opposite reason.
Our turn 0 was like pretty weird. Like I'm sitting there, I'm playing my game, and I'm loading up all the rocks in the corner, and you keep adding rocks to my pile, and I'm like, everything I want. Like, this is gonna be an easy final, and then I kind of look over at the board, and I'm like, everything he wants to. But yeah, no, like I said, the list kind of plays behind those rocks a lot of times. A lot of people have to engage it. If you're flying aces, the kind of things where I need the advantage of the board edge or the obstacles to kind of get an edge over, Alvo dice to have the odds on that one, so they'll most ace players will come into the rocks even though it's not their best move because the final salvo is pretty bad for them. And most things that maybe don't need to engage, like have equivalent final salvo dice, usually don't have enough game to I can usually fight them in the open board and come out ahead. In this case, it was part of me, playing too much to that strategy that I didn't leave. I built my little happy fun house, but then I left too much open board outside of it that I couldn't come bully you out in the open field.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the one time it kind of bit me in the ass is I didn't leave enough obstacles for me to use out in the field if I wanted to come out. Lock myself into the fortress, by the way we played it out turn 0.
Mm-hmm.
And my one foil of this list is the Tie Swarm. It is probably my worst matchup. It's got enough
Just because
final
your
salvo dice.
individual ships don't do well against multiple, more than 4 shots.
Yeah, I mean it's got enough jousting power to flatten me because Iden exists and Howl Runner is kind of awesome, so you can't kill Howl Runner on the joust.
Mm-hmm.
And then better final salvo dice with me, so I can't run from it. So final salvo
I was gonna
dice.
say it should be the same.
So that one it usually takes a lot of finesse to get. I either got to convince the tie guy to come into the rocks. Dicey game, just because the ties don't typically lose anybody on the go. Like I usually consider myself to be doing good if I pop Iden on the first round of engagement with the Tie Swarm.
And you faced 2 Tie Swarms in Swiss, correct?
2 of them. Probably my 2 of the best Tie Swarm players I've had the pleasure of playing against. Dallas Parker, who can give you, anyone up in that area a masterclass on how to fly Tie Swarm.
That's who I learned from.
The esteemed Ian Hamp of, I believe, the Phoenix Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
Were flying Tie Swarms that day. And I thought I was going to dodge Dallas because he picked up a loss, I think, in round 3 or 4. And Andrew Lopez helped me out by giving me a loss to put me in the same bracket with him. But yeah, that's generally where I run into, and part of that was we set up, and then I looked over at what we had brought together with the board, and I had kind of overheard or saw Ryan's matches earlier that day where somebody was calling the judge on him because he was bumping those 2 ships, and then when I saw him in the corner, I'm like, I don't think he's coming, and Ryan just straight up told me, he's like, I'm not going over there. I'm like, I'm probably not going over there either. So I'm like, I did the math on it. I'm like, he's got 1 more final die coin flip.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can win a fight in the open field. And I'm like, yeah, the clock was pretty much my only out. I just needed to come in there on the last turn. I'm like, range 3, I've got 4 defense dice to his 2, and Vipers is enough that I can force it to be offsides, to be 4v2 or 4v3, and which the background behind my take on that game. I even told Ryan. I think we were about halfway through. I told him I was coming.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of wonky things about that match.
Yeah, no, the best one was right because the game got set with a 75-minute timer. And I told him what my plan was. And I'm kind of we're about 16 minutes on the clock, and I'm meandering down to that little gap between the 2 gas clouds where I was going to go jump into his range because I wanted his torrents between me and the Arc and Luminarch because I didn't want them to fight. Came in, and right about this time, some other podcaster on the show comes running up to the judge with the damn rules document going, hey, look, it's a 2-hour final.
I wanted to make sure you guys played a legitimate game.
So then, the judge is like, well, I'm going to extend the clock. So then I got to go take my happy ass back into the corner because it's not time to come out.
I wanted everyone to suffer.
There are some
Yeah,
words
he
I would
did.
use to describe that last match, but legitimate, I don't know, would be on the top 10.
I have to say, just right off the bat, that rule I think has got to go. I think
Agreed.
if the whole tournament 75 minutes, to make the last round play a different game by being a longer time,
I think it's
I
mainly
don't
so
know.
there's a finish. But
If
this
we
happens.
If Charles wasn't,
Oh, is
such
that
an
the idea,
enforcer
Trevor?
of the rules, I would have asked to just advance the clock to 20 minutes because we both determined that we weren't moving.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
would have
like,
agreed to that.
especially after he pushed the time up, I'm like, dude, there's no way he's gonna do that.
So,
So what was
fun times were had.
Yeah. So what was your view on like why'd you set up the way you did, Ryan?
so the way I set up my my ships is, well, depending on how it goes, I've already explained. Generally, I like a pretty open space area on at least one corner. So usually my first rock is a 3-2, coming from 3 on the left or right side, and then 2 from your side of the board. And yeah, if I can get a pretty well open area, that's usually the side where my Sinker and Luminara will go. Sinker is usually placed left or right, facing, just depending on what side has more freedom of space. And Luminara is usually right up next to wherever Sinker is facing, just so they can both do Sinker doing a 1 forward, which bumps, and then Luminara doing a 1 turn, which bumps. So effectively, I could just have them sit in wherever their starting area is indefinitely. And so they're usually sitting on one of the left or right corners. And then the 4 V19s, I usually will place directly middle of the my side of the board in standard, pretty much cube formation, so I can fly them in formation for as long as I need to. And the way my list normally gets flown is these V19s will just usually first turn 2 towards the direction of Luminar and barrel towards the board edge, and 1 forward, 2 turn in towards the middle of the board, and just essentially these 4 V19s are just formation flying slowly, waiting for the opponent to come to my corner. Now, the reason why I need it for that to work is because the way Luminara, or no, actually the way Sinker works, Sinker's ability is essentially a like a pseudo Howl Runner that works at range 1 to 2, but only on the side, and it's where there's not really another ability that works like that. Set up. Also, at the same time, get shots with. But with this setup that I had found out, it makes it so Sinker can usually get shots, while at the same time everyone else in the list gets those rerolls. So that was my game plan going into the final round. And when I noticed that Mitch has a similar type of a fly around and just wait for the opponent to come to you strategy, I was like, well, I'm not going into that mess. I'm just going to keep doing this until you come. And I mean, I've had games before.
You did have the extra final salvo die too, so
I mean, I offered the final salvo often.
I want it. You can keep it.
I just was trying to save everyone 2 hours.
Speaking of that,
Yeah,
trying to
so-
save everyone 2 hours. If we fast forward a little bit, why did you do a 3 bank off the board? I must know.
So that was intentional. So at the end of the game, it's like we've been flying around doing literally nothing for 2 hours, and Mitch, he was telegraphing what he wanted to do early on.
I straight up told you.
Yeah,
twice.
yeah. Could be mind games. I don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, your opponent's not the most trustworthy news source.
You never know. So he tells me he's gonna, wait till like 5 minutes or so to fly in and try to V-win. You know what? The perfect, screw you trollololol would be just flying off one of my ships just so he doesn't get that MOV victory on his own. And because I already have my worlds cut, I'm just like, you know what? I don't care if he wins. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the reason. There's really no reason other than I just wanted to be
for the lulz.
For the lulz, essentially.
Like a true citizen of 4chan.
So, yeah, it's unfortunate that we had 2 hours of all the people that were...
So, past what happened and, our various reasons... do you think fortressing or flying castles in my particular case is something that needs to be changed or redefined?
So I'll tell you what, I'll pull up what exactly the tournament resources actually says about it, just so people know things that people really don't know about it. They kind of just call it okay. Tournament regulations. Okay, so fortressing. Yeah. People often are very concerned about what you're doing over there. Is that even legal?
I will make it legal.
Okay, so fortressing. Fortressing is the conduct violation relating to a game state in which one or both players are using the rules for overlapping ships to prevent the movement of their own ships. It is considered a form of stalling as it seeks to create an exploit in a stalemate. Is that what we're doing? If you stop there, yes. But it goes on. The act of fortressing can only be determined by a marshal. At the end of the activation phase, a player may request that a leader check their opponent's ships for fortressing. If the leader confirms that the criteria are met, a marshal then makes the determination whether or not a player is. The criteria in the game state for fortressing are as follows, 2 bullet points. Due to the maneuvers that a player has selected, all of that player's ships have overlapped one another in such a manner that none have changed positions on the board for 2 or more consecutive turns. That second bullet point being that player could have selected maneuvers that did not result in the same game state.
So your argument is you only bump 2 of your ships, ergo not
correct. Because the first bullet point does explicitly say all ships.
Right now, because I've seen a couple of arguments as to maybe not the letter of the rule, but the intent of the rule is you're trying to exploit a stalemate.
Yeah. Quite possible. I will come back to that. But, let me finish what it does read up on fortressing, because there's a little bit more to it. After those 2 bullet points, if the leader determines that these criteria are not met, they should inform the players and consider the matter resolved. If the leader confirms that the situation fits the above criteria, they should call for a marshal to deliver a final ruling. Marshal determines that a player is trying to use the fortressing to their advantage. They should inform the player of this fact and instruct the player to pilot maneuvers and end fortressing board state. If the player fails to do so, at the end of the next activation, all of their ships are destroyed and the game ends. Alternatively, if the marshal determines that the has reacted or has reached this state unintentionally, they should privately ensure that the player is aware of maneuvers that they can select to free their ships from the collision. If the player then fails to select to free their ships at the end of the next activation phase, their opponent may again request the leader check for fortressing. Players should not request a check for fortressing unless the above criteria are met, as repeatedly doing so could be considered unsporting conduct. And that's pretty much all that the tournament regulation says on fortressing. Now, how this pertains to what me and Mitch were doing in the final match. In my opinion, we were both involved in a form of stalling. I'm pretty sure that's fairly clear. Now, are we able to win against that? I would say possibly. Do I agree with that? No. I think it should be something that there should be rules for. Regardless if it's a legitimate strategy or not. So
I don't agree with it, but I accept it.
Yeah. What could be changed to better accommodate or make this so this kind of thing doesn't happen? The best thing that I can think of is, making a small edit to one of those bullet points or adding an additional bullet. Getting rid of the all word in the first would.
Which I suppose dismantles your list, but what does it do against flying castles like, Phantoms or my Vipers?
So the bullet point you would need to add for the Vipers and such would have to be some kind of a if ships haven't moved beyond say range 2 of their board edge in a certain amount of rounds, then a marshal should be called and review the situation and
as a counterpoint. So applying, for example, that suggested ruling to our game. Mill back and forth on my own board edge, but I could just as easily have taken that Star Viper brick up and down the right side of the board.
Correct.
And netted the identical.
Correct.
You try to overrule it to players what maneuvers they're allowed to use.
I don't think it would get to that point.
It basically takes two to not engage.
Correct.
Enough that if one of the players wants to engage, there will be an engagement. Short of, I don't know, both can run for an hour.
Now this is a joke. Interesting
thought experiment.
Yeah, interesting thought experiment. What if the marshal had like a pocket full of asteroids that they could just carry around, and if something like this comes up, they could just start placing asteroids on the board and anywhere they want, kind of deal.
Don't go here.
Yeah, I mean that's probably never going to happen, but who knows? What if they just carry a bunch of asteroids in their pocket and they go, you guys are fortressing, plop plop plop. Plop, plop, plop. Let's continue, please.
I think, I don't know. I would love to see the objectives become a more popular format. I mean, I think the best way to encourage the players to, engage each other is to make it so that, if you don't engage, you lose, and then try to figure out how to define and enforce that. Mm-hmm. Put some kind of objective in the middle of the frickin' map and go, if you don't control this, you lose, and then the two players got to go fight over it.
Which is it? Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
And then maybe make a couple different formats randomly rolled for so that it doesn't get stale.
That could potentially work. I can see that working.
I see a lot of... Or go ahead.
Because just based off of a purely dogfighty type game, it's going to eventually happen. I mean, it did. Where
I think we're talking about
two lists will come up. That it's not advantageous for them to engage the other player.
I mean, we both were counterpunch jujitsu type lists, right?
Yeah.
In your corner because you've got the final salvo. Mm-hmm. You don't need to come to me, and because I'm in the last 5 minutes of the game, I think I can school you for those points.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And even if you guys tied, let's say if you killed a torrent and then you lost half a viper, now you're in the lead. So you have even more incentive of just firing at the last round as possible.
I had a chance to kind of flip the script instead of just accepting the salvo. Just the only downside is the price of picking that script is I had to do donuts for 2 hours before I could attempt it. And I was kind of concerned that you might actually shot to try and disrupt my plan. Like, I could see myself coming in the last couple of minutes only to have you try to fade deeper into your corner and then deny me the engagement.
Yeah, with my list, even getting close to that cluster of asteroids it might have worked for a round, but 2-3 rounds after those engagements would have been very bad.
It was the same scenario for me heading to your side of the board. Yeah. Like, I'd come in, I'll win the round 3 the range 3 engagement, and then the next 2 rounds are filled with nothing but blocks and heavily mounted range 1 shots.
Exactly.
I think it was just like that. We're both standing on either side of a door with a giant mallet, waiting for the other guy to walk through.
That's a beautiful way to put it, but yeah.
But I think we've. I don't know. Do we think either of our particular lists are a problem?
I mean, I haven't seen.
We make the new cancer.
I mean, I haven't seen anyone else fly my particular list other than like a different variant that instead of using Luminara, they have a second arc and a hull upgrade on Sinker. But other than that, I mean, I haven't seen anyone run my list.
Is Luminara good in that list with only having 2 force?
Yeah. I mean, her force is almost exclusively used to downgrade dice against. So
she's just a sensor jammer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, it's an interesting deterrent because against Rebel Beef, when Wedge is shooting, he wants to roll natties essentially because he does not want to spend that focus if he has one.
Mm-hmm. You can make somebody spend a focus that you want to kill.
Yeah. So like multiple times during the tournament, there would be a Wedge shooting at somebody, and all Luminara their hit focus into hit focus, and they're like, ooh, I was happy with 2 hits, and then they're like, I don't want to spend for 3, and sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't, and the times that they did usually ended very badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they don't necessarily kill your Torrent at range 3, and now you've got a tokenless Wedge to rip apart.
Yeah, Torrents are so insane. They 5 health. 2 attack, 2 agility, a pretty good dial for 25 points.
Gunboat profile minus the beam.
Yeah, it's 25 points for that is crazy. I don't know.
I'm definitely going to pick up your list.
Considering running 8 of them.
Oh yeah, I mean that is a ton of health. I've played with the Star Vipers, I think hundreds of games by this point between all the I think I must have run at least casual games, and the only game where we've had opposing stalemates.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because everyone makes the mistake of actually engaging the Star Vipers. No one's come to the conclusion that you just don't go over to the Star Vipers until the final table.
Yeah, you just wait.
I had one opponent that wouldn't do it. It was actually I think it was Sean McCord, actually, of all people. Mm-hmm. We were playing at Rivco, and it was in the Geonosis rules, so we had 12 asteroids on the field. So I had the biggest fun house ever, and they were all scattered across my side of the board. He was flying. He was flying a Heftober Beef Wedgington, and he's like looked over and he's like, "I'm not going in there." And he just was moseying down his side of the board to turn around. So he K-turned everything, and then started to do. He was going to do a 2-turn for Hef, and I was on the top end of my rotation in the corner, and I decided you lined up the K-turn, so I just, instead of, I did the hard turn, and then instead of into my corner, I actually barrel rolled out into the board, and I'm like, bounce I basically, since he's facing away from me and stressed, him before he gets all the way turned back around, and it made for a fairly interesting game. But usually you can just to come in there. I'm looking to catch them as they wander maybe a little bit too close. But he was, about the only other person that was straight up said, I'm not coming over there.
Yeah.
and he also had 12 dice. So, play the mods.
So I thought the final was hilarious. People keep like apologizing, like saying, "Man, I feel sorry
I am
for
kind
the."
of sorry for the commentators. That was probably not a fun job.
Well, I was one of the commentators, and I had a fun day. Especially because we just put up on the screen halfway through. We'll be back when action happens. I promise.
And you were the sadist that got him to extend it to
Yeah.
the legal 2 hours.
I wanted to suffer. I was Kylo Ren pounding my chest. But I think, I don't know, I found it funny. We're all laughing in the store, so like people don't need to apologize for us. Deegan was kind of like he was sleeping for a good 30 minutes. But other than that, like I thought it was a good afternoon. I think it just kind of shows you how there can be lists that totally aren't fortressing, but they are. The FFG needs to like be aware of. It's not necessarily the list in particular, but kind of like there needs to be a goal or an objective to force engagement, whether that's changing how Final Salvo works or how fortressing is defined.
And I think until that time that they do make a change, it's nice to have this example out there so marshals understand, at the beginning of a tournament, make it very clear, I will rule this way.
Yeah, I personally do agree 100%. I really do hope that, if people do see our match and stuff, I mean, why would you ever sit 2 hours through that, for one? But, I mean, if you're from FFG, I hope you see that match and go, okay, yeah, we do need to make some changes to this.
Required viewing.
I really do hope something gets done about that. Yeah, I don't think it's fun. I don't think Mitch had as much fun playing this game with that match. But, we kept ourselves entertained. But,
the interesting point is, when FFG wrote those rules, did they want it to apply to this situation? If they did, they do need to revisit those rules and make their intentions more clear, because right now you cannot draw any conclusions beyond what you've already just concluded, that you were playing within the scope of the rules.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't want it to be like that. It is a legitimate strategy for the list I run, but do I want it to be like that? No, not necessarily. No, I have fun playing, jousty lists just as much as the next person, or a super hyper maneuverable list. Mm-hmm. I have fun playing the game regardless, but I don't think that this type of a strategy should be in high level play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my 2 cents on that.
Fair enough. Well, I think we've beat this horse to death for certain.
Yeah, I'd agree. Should we move on to a new segment?
Sure.
All right. Knowing that we have a squad of the week coming up, I decided to pick a little bit of lore really quick. Lore's actually about Venny. Does anybody know who Venny is?
No
He's
idea.
the guy that has that cool bomber.
The cool bomber. So Venny was a member of Cobalt Squadron and featured in Cobalt Squadron, the book, which covers kind of Paige and Rose and what they were doing during the events of The Force Awakens. Essentially, Cobalt Squadron were out doing relief missions for these planets that were under attack by the First Order, including, I believe, if I understand correctly, Paige and Rose's home planet. But Venny is actually a female pilot, and we don't know the species, but because the author is human, I think it's likely, since it's not mentioned, then Venny's probably human. So human-female, who knew, right?
Oh man, I always thought Venny was a dude.
Yeah, me too. With a
Well,
name like Venny, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking Venny, a girl. So she was a member of Cobalt Squadron and flew a bomber during those relief missions. And then after Hosnian Prime and the Hosnian system was destroyed by this, then Vice Admiral shipped the Ninka over to the bombers. Cobalt Squadron said, hop in, we got to get into the car and help with the evac. That's how they got here, where they got the source. But they also told Venny to pilot a starfighter for the resistance during the evacuation of their base. So we know that Veni had experience flying A-wings, so at this point it's unclear whether during the Battle of Dakar Veni actually piloted one of the bombers, the MG-1 Star Fortress, MG-100 Star Fortresses, or whether Veni hopped in an RZ-2 flew escort. So she was. One last interesting little tidbit before we move on to the squad highlight of the week. 6 bombers from Cobalt Squadron were brought over to the battle. But when you watch the battle, there are 8 bombers total. And so at least 2 of them are Crimson Squadron, and then you have the 6 Cobalts, I guess is how it's broken up. When you look at General Leia's screen after the battle's over, it shows 7 bombers all destroyed, but there's not an 8th one there. So it's kind of interesting. Question whether there's 6 bombers because they're all Cobalt, or whether there's some Crimson, and if there are, how many. But judging by the shots that you can see, I'm guessing the actual number is 8 bombers in that battle. So then, of course, if you ever have a chance to play Epic, with huge battles, I wonder how many points it would take to put 8 bombers with escorts in there fighting against the First Order. Sounds pretty exciting to me.
Get that First Order Dreadnought in Epic.
You'd probably have a token that does long-range bombardments.
I mean, the Dreadnought would just be like a mat.
It would be. It essentially would
play
be
on the Dreadnought.
And then have turrets you'd have to just take out. And yeah.
Sounds like a Death Star trench run.
It does, right? It's First Order version.
Yeah. Well, that segues nicely into our list of the week. So the list that we're dissecting this week is Super Veni. So this one revolves around Veni. Under the hood, you have Ray Gunner, veteran turret gunner for that double gunner goodness, PO trajectory simulator, proton bomb, and seismic bomb. He's flanked by Lieutenant Bastion with the integrated servos and M9G8, and then Lula with 1 point of your choice of heroic, crack shot, or a bid as you desire. What does it offer? It's got superior.
Who here has had a chance to fight against this?
I fought against it plenty of times. It is retarded. It is like, I hate this list.
I just want to say before you go into what it offers that every one of these upgrades are critical, because I fought 2 versions of this that differed from this, and they were essentially pushovers because they didn't have all these pieces. So
what were they omitting?
Them was omitting the bombs and they beefed up one of the escorts more, or I think they had another one. I think one of them was way different. It dropped a lot of the upgrades on Veni, and then had, instead of Bastion, it was one of the other T-70 pilots who operates more on his own. And so it really changed the whole dynamic of how you fly. Why don't we talk about what this does with all these pieces?
So, with the pieces is listed, it offers superior defense on Veni. You've got basically up to 3 added evade results that you can. Veni's ability says, when defending, if the attacker is in a friendly turret arc, doesn't necessarily need to be Veni's turret arc, it could be Lulo's, because Lulo's only gun is a turret. You get to add an evade result to your defense roll. So at C3PO, you get to double calculate, and then on top of that, you've got raise force token. If you're attacking or defending inside your turret arc, not just friendly on, spend a force charge to convert a blank die. And then just in general, it's a force charge, so you can convert a focus at any time, regardless of whether or not they're in your arc. So if they're in your turret arc, you get, basically every time you're attacked, you add a focus, and up to 3 times per round, you can flip that focus. It does cost you your tokens to kind of put up this iron defense, but if somebody shoots you, you can guarantee the first time, you can guarantee that you roll 2. Flip if you roll a blank, you can flip it with Ray. If you roll a focus, you can double calculate, the 1 plus the 1 you get added. Hell, you might even just get lucky and, kind of felt dirty like 1.0 reinforce where you just rolled the first evade naturally.
This thing can really tank. Like, you can have like a 4-die shot versus it and do like no damage, it feels like.
If you don't max out, you get 1 damage or none. It can feel pretty bad. So, and then if your opponent decides that they don't want to, try to dunk on 1.0 defense, you get to turn around and dump 1.0 levels of offense on them as you now leverage your unspent tokens to pretty much just guarantee max results. You've got M9G8 with rerolls. You've got 2 tokens to flip a pair of eyeballs. And then if you still haven't maxed out the dice after that, you can just spend a ray token to flip one of the dice to a hit in and of that. So the odds are you're probably only going to spend at most 2 tokens max hack, and then you veteran turret gunner or either calculate a ray token to attempt to max out your second 2-die attack. Like a Mack truck if you don't shoot it. On top of this, you're also launching proton or seismic bombs to either open up lanes or just spread damage into your opponent's joust in. Of note, just because of the way large bases and T-Sims work, if you do a 1 forward and you launch a T-Sim, unless it's the seismic and you're hitting an appropriately ranged obstacle. So you do kind of keep that in mind, but most times trading the 1 hull on Venny is well worth it if you can get a multi proton hit on the joust.
So I have a couple questions at this point.
Alrighty.
First of all, is there anything you can ditch that would allow you to take the why can't I remember to ignore your own bombs?
A blade of
yes.
Right. It's not hyperspace legal, so that's your. If you wanted to run this in hyperspace, you're probably looking at ditching. I think a blade of plating, if I remember correctly, is either 4 or 6. I can't remember which.
I was thinking 4 too.
If it's 4, you can ditch the seismics plus the 1-point bid, and that makes you the 4. If it's 6, you got to eat the proton bombs, which kind of feels bad.
That does.
But there is a variant that can maybe play with the blade of plating, and I'll get to that in a little bit.
Oh, okay.
You do also have a chance to triple up on the mods. There's a lot of really good interplay between Penny and Bastion, as they're both initiative 2, so you can alternate the order that you move them in to your advantage. And then if, while you're doing Super Venny's double tap, you clip an opponent with hull damage from that second shot, you can flip the target lock over to your opponent, and then fire Lieutenant Bastion, who ostensibly focused with focused target locked attacks off of his T-70 gun. So definitely do some serious damage for to go for that coup de grace to finish off a weakened opponent.
Mitch, real quick. I was thinking about it while looking at this list. Maybe this is a variant you guys might have already seen. Would it be beneficial in having Vinny shoot earlier with, say, swarm tactics on Lulo by dropping seismic?
It could be worth it. Generally,
now you wouldn't necessarily always have to be, trying to shoot at 5 just when you can.
I honestly kind of like firing late with Venny, just because it leaves her tokens up to defend with if your opponent decides to fire in there. If you fire too early with Venny, you spend out all your tokens, and then you're just an agility 1 chip sitting in front of whatever you didn't kill.
Correct.
So that was going to be my next question is, the way you have this built out, it seems to me, I'm a defensive player by nature. Like in all the games that I play, I really value defense, which is hard because X-Wing doesn't. But in this case, do you usually use your use every token you have possible to mitigate damage, and then just use what you have left? Especially Ray is who I'm thinking of.
Well, because you have M9G8s, you've still, even if you burn out all your tokens, you've still got offensive mods. So you're not, you're not wet noodle, and that's part of why I like having
Bastion there with M9G8.
Yeah. And then continuing on, you've got what else is it? Yeah, you got the hot swap lock with Bastion. You can later on start target locking your opponents with Bastion to disrupt their attack if you need. Is basically the best flanker in the game. Red is undercosted as fuck. Basically, Lulu's probably going to go up in points. You're probably going to need to find a new flanker when the point adjustment comes in, because I think love on T-Sims not much, and veteran turret gunner may or may not change in points. The list might, it's going to be here for about a month, but there's probably going to be some changes incoming for it. And then delayed diffuses are coming, so people might be tinkering with this to figure out how to stick those under the hood, because that just plays even more mind games with your opponent if you can close off a lane, reload that bomb, and then come into an engagement with an extra bomb covering your flank and still full charges on your ordnance.
Now, I'll tell you one thing. If Trajectory Simulator and Proton Bomb list becomes a thing, the crap that I pull with my my Republic list will become a thing of the past. Because if somebody could just pop up, just in the corner over there and just start shooting some proton bombs at my list, it ain't gonna keep doing what it's doing.
It's definitely it's gonna force you to definitely change up your game.
Exactly.
Your T-Sim bombs definitely, so you've already got solid jousting power, and then you add T-Sim bombs, it's got some good offer. It does have some challenges that you do gotta overcome in flying it, which is number one thing that I think keeps it out of being at the top table. The strategy of your list does involve lining up a 0 reposition large base ship that moves to.
So doesn't it? Or
well, if you're running the variant that I've done, you usually run your turret double front. So with the standard, for the very first bit of the game, you're playing with that standard forward firing arc,
which is 3 dice.
It's a 3 dice turret with a 2 dice. The turret's 2 dice with the main gun that's a forward 3.
Got it.
Your flanker that you're working with is Lulo is cheap, but Lulo folds like the French to I6 aces.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And most of your positional I5s like Guri usually are going to come up with enough bid to still play the position against you. That said, A-Wings can still play down. I've had times where I'm facing I6s with Venny, and I just deep into that corner as I can, or not Venny, sorry, Lulo as deep into that corner as I can, and go, you gotta leave the fight to go do it. And, play chicken with my opponent. Meanwhile, hopefully their ace is chasing Lulo for several rounds while preying on the support of the list.
I have another question about the list. With Bastion, do you ever play around with his ability? So I believe it reads that whenever at range, was it 1 to 2?
Yeah, I think up to range 2 takes a damage, hull damage. You can move your lock onto that opponent, and very much so, like I said, was talking about the triple up on the mods.
Yeah.
You can use it to fill up your alpha strike. If you've had to move your lock over to something else and somebody's shooting Venny, opportunity to throw your lock back onto Venny.
Yeah, so in a perfect scenario, you shoot with Lulo, remove shield.
Shoot with Venny.
Shoot with Venny, get a damage card. Get a damage card on the ship you're shooting at, and then when that ship receives a damage card, if it's within 1 to 2, you get to target lock with Bastion, and Bastion gets potentially 2 double mods on his end.
Exactamundo. So
yeah,
that's pretty much cool. It's got super synergy going for it. So how do you fly the damn thing? You're looking to pair up Bastion and Venny, since that Initiative 2 synergy is big. You're gonna, get the lock onto Venny, and then you want to trail. Usually, I trail Bastion to the side and rear of the bomber. You're attacking. You don't want to offer Bastion is a tempting target, because if your opponent if Bastion's ahead of the bomber, it doesn't triple mod his defense, and they can kind of hang back and blow Bastion a bit. So if they want something other than your bomber, play with Venny to go get it. So that said, if you're attacking this list, probably try to find a way not to attack Venny first if you can help it. Or try to get into a position where you can put guns on Bastion, because it's like a heads I win, tails you lose scenario with attacking Venny. Either you attack him and your attack power, or you don't and then get blasted for it. You want to, how you play Lulo changes on what you're facing. 6s or those positional 5s with the bid gets to be bait. You're going to use Lulo and your opponent's desire to kill Lulo to kind of drag them in front of your bomber. So, you'll threaten a flank with Lulo, flank just outside of Lulo because they play second, send your flight path right across Venny's guns. As your opponent's trying to chase and bite on Lulo, you drag them right in front of the bomber, and it goes to work. Usually they'll scrub the chase of Lulo when they're stopping to just deal with the physical mass and area that your bomber covers. If you happen to be facing one of those lists that's all I4 or less, or didn't bring a bid, then you get a pocket ace, and Lulo does Lulo things when you let him run the flank. Mind is, after that initial joust with Venny, if you're running this original variant we discussed, you're definitely going to want to think of how likely you are to ever line up that primary double arc again. If you're fighting something like a Vader or Soontir, first pass, take the time, flip your arcs left and right, 270, and the consistent, fully modded double, even the 2 guide, they still do damage. And they're usually enough to pick off those last 1 or 2 hit points or ace pieces after they come out of that first exchange.
Right, especially if you have the M9G8 reroll.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
With M9G8 and Ray, you pretty much always get 2. And then calculates on top of that, really nail it home. It's kind of the main things to think of for flying it. Some variants that I've seen and I've theorized. You can swap out Ray and C-3PO for Perceptive, Co-Pilot, and Page. This kind of gives you a higher floor, lower ceiling type of list. Some of the advantages you're going to get with this is with Page on there, you can just leave your turret at the 270 at the left right. Then you have got the main gun covering front and your turret at left right. And if the opponent happens to be in your front arc, you can fire proc Page to rotate the turret to the front, fire the turret with veteran turret gunner, then proc Page again to flip your turret back to left right. So it keeps you with 100% uptime on 270-degree coverage. So it makes it really easy to leverage that veteran turret gunner, even if you're worried about your arcs. The disadvantages are you're going to have less. You don't have the passive you don't have the passive force for your die mods, and you can't flip. You can't flip blanks. It is less points, however. So you do, when you make that 3PO to chances to have mods. When you do the stop maneuver and go with advanced optics to get back your ability to modify blank dice on your attacks by spending 1 focus token to flip a blank and then a second one to have. This gives you that chance to get that that maxed out 3 dice attack, but you really burn through your tokens and it leaves your defense overall weaker because you can't. And if you bump, you have no mods. Because you don't get the focuses when you take red take red actions or bump. So there's definitely some give and take to it, but pretty much impossible to get arc dodged if you're running with the page version. Plus extra bomb shenanigans when you fire and don't need to rotate the arc. You guys' thoughts?
Scary. I do want to fly it. It seems really interesting. I haven't bought into Resistance yet. That's start to borrow the pieces from somebody sometime. Yeah, sounds really cool.
This is your totally wholesome Fortress of Solitude here.
I think the only kind of, well, not one only, but one of the archetypes listed trouble is swarms. Could definitely give it some trouble.
That's the T-Sims really fight back against the swarms. Nothing really makes a TIE swarm be polite like a proton bomb launched into their midst.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
My best strategy I found when facing against this list has been to literally split up my swarm. For on one side of the board, and the other. I have 2 academies, right? So what I found, if I set up one academy on one side of the board, the other on the completely opposite side of the board, and then he sets down his list, and then I just set the rest of my ships on the other side of the board, and then just run away with the one academy that's alone. Just because he's going to set up right across from you with the I-1 being placed, and you don't really want that.
Yeah, this is probably one of the few lists that can violate the Rule 1 of X-Wing, don't joust the damn swarm.
Yep. Cool.
That's most of what we got for this week. Any last shout-outs there?
Yeah, I got some. Another shout-out to Isaiah Brody, again, for the top 8 templates. I appreciate it. I'll be using them all the time now. And then Daniel Simmons, he was the first winner ever of the Tabletop Simulator TMK Monthly Tournament. He went 2-1, and he ran a Howlrunner, Steel, Wampa, Vizier, and Mauler Mythal. And he's a brand new player. That was the first time he ever played on Tabletop Simulator versus anyone, and I think it's the first tournament he's ever been in, whether it was in person or online, and he did great. He beat me pretty good, so congrats to him. And then that's all my shout-outs for the week.
I just want to give a shout-out here to Ryan Frost. Thanks for taking the time to come on our podcast.
No problem. I would like to shout out Brent Scott, man, a good buddy of mine, and also the guy that gave you those really cool shield.
General, so
yeah, everyone's buddy.
Brent's awesome.
Brent's a great guy, and he came down for the tournament and pretty much gave everyone the normal experience with Brent, and he's just an awesome guy.
That's the only reason I won, by the way, was I had more of those tokens than you did.
Yeah, I only had one.
I think I want to shout out to GMI Games for just putting on a great show and great tournament, and Charles and Mitch for their efforts as marshal and judge, or Mitch Hurst as marshal and judge. So, yeah, it wouldn't be possible without their efforts.
Yes, thanks.
Well, that's our show for today. And until next time, Kothan Sai.
That's around.